everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Scope from the 25th to the 31st of January. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's Weekly Scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I, formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellational Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes, and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs, the Western signs, shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year, and Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination, either both planets are on the north side or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contraparallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contraparallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contraparallels happen, they can sort of trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contraparallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contraparallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contraparallels just kind of provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contraparallels and parallels are. So this is a week when light meets shadow. So the main aspects that are influencing us this week is the Sun's parallel to Venus, Mercury's contraparallel to Uranus, and Mars making a conjunction to Pluto, which is one of the many big aspects this year. So yeah, I'm Amani, your holistic karmic astrological life coach, and I'm going to take you on this journey. So the main aspect that is influencing us this week is the Sun's parallel to Venus, and this peaks on the 26th of January. Okay, so first I'm going to jump into the energy of this week. So there's a softness trying to break through all of this darkness, all of this shadow this week. But as I said, it's got to fight its way past the rubble first, past the, the chaos. So the Sun's parallel to Venus, which peaks on Monday morning, is when our heart and identity come together and fuse. Love and light can operate and are operating together beneath our awareness, but that softness lands in the same week as Mars conjunct Pluto. So we've got, the two kind of co-rulers of Scorpio, the 8th house. Some people say it's just Pluto. Traditionally, it's Mars that rules Scorpio, right? So this conjunction between Mars and Pluto also, comes together the strongest on Monday night, and this is booty meeting brutality, grace meeting rawness, right? Because we've got the Sun parallel to Venus, so that's the grace this week, and the rawness is the Mars Pluto, right? So the part that wants to connect, running headlong into the part that's still burning everything down, so we're gonna have a tug of war between wanting to be close to people this week and wanting to be alone, right? This is the week of contradiction, and we can't resolve it, we can only sort of hold it. So we're being asked to be tender, gentle, loving, open-minded, whilst also being powerful, empowering ourselves to let go of the things and people that we need to, right? Remember, we're just into the final week, the long month of January after Christmas. Some of you are like, yay! But yeah, so, we're still doing the New Year's goals for those of you whose New Year starts on the 1st of January, for you that, like me, do the astrological calendar, and New Year starts on the 21st of March, or the 20th not the summer solstice, the spring solstice, right? So you've got 2 months where you're closing down your old year, right? But ultimately this week is wanting us to be open whilst being strategic, to let ourselves want something whilst, simultaneously destroying what's no longer serving us, right? And if that sounds impossible, that's because it almost is, right? The work this week is learning to be both at the same time, not choosing between them, not splitting ourselves in half, but somehow impossibly becoming the person who can hold light and shadow in the same hand without either one consuming the other. And Mercury's contra-power to Uranus this week adds to the mental confusion, disruption, right? Bringing it in bucket loads, right? So we can have thoughts that won't sit still. So, if you're overthinker, it can be an overdrive this week. Insights that arrive sideways. Like, what does that really mean, And we can just have the need and desire to say something shocking just to see what happens, because that's what Uranus energy at the worst can just make us rebel for the sake of it, boredom, wanting to spice things up a bit, So this isn't a week for playing it safe anyway. This isn't a week for pretending you've got it together. This is the week, you let yourself be messy, contradictory, human, and somehow in the mess you find something real, right? Something true, something that's been waiting underneath all the performance for you to finally stop defending it and just let it be, right? So yeah. So now I'm just going to do the quick astrological breakdown of everything that's influencing us this week, right? So we've got the sun's parallel to Venus. This entered on the 3rd of December 2025, was exact on the 21st of December. It's also exact this week on the 26th of January 2026 at 3:12 a.m. and it's going to leave us on the 15th of February. So this is influencing us now for the next 3 weeks or so, taking us into Valentine's Day. So good for that Valentine's Day love. The sun's in Capricorn and Venus is in Capricorn as well. Mercury makes its contra-power to Uranus, as I said. This entered on the 22nd of January, is exact on the 27th of January and leaves us on the 30th of January. So, really influencing us this week. Then we've got Mercury making a conjunction to Venus, This enters on the 27th of January, is exact on the 29th of January at 10:16 a.m. and leaves us on the 31st of January. Then we've got the sun making a parallel to Mercury and this entered on the 21st of January, is exact at 6:33 p.m. on the 30th of January and leaves us on the 5th of February, right? So those are our main aspects this week. So the primary transit of the sun parallel Venus, and this just means it's the one with the strongest energy this week, and it becomes exact for the second time on the 26th of January at 3:21 a.m. As I said, and parallel in astrology works as the same as a conjunction, Venus and Capricorn are at the same declination, in the same intensity, operating together beneath our awareness. So our identity, our persona is combined with value, light merged with love. As I said, who you are cannot be separated. It's inseparable from what you want this week. And as I said, this energy won't release until the 15th of February. So the question of what do I actually want and who am I becoming have been nearly inseparable now for the nearly 2 months, especially for those of you with sun in Capricorn, a strong sun placements and Venus placements in your natal chart as well, and aspects to sun and Venus as well. So maybe you've been trying to answer them separately, the question of what you want and who you're becoming, but they're not separate questions. Who you are is what you want, and what you want reveals who you are. So this week the sun Venus parallel is making that impossible to ignore, and the sun parallel Venus in Capricorn is strategic desire. So well planned, thought out desire, planned out strategies to meet our needs, right? It's knowing what you want and being willing to build toward it, to bring the things, the routines, the relationships, the thoughts into your life patiently, methodically, without needing immediate gratification, because a lot of the time we want everything now, and we can be impatient, right? But this week's energy is wanting us to be patient. So yeah, it's the energy of I know my worth and I'm not negotiating it down to make you comfortable, It's allowing yourself to be patient, not to just go for that immediate gratification and pleasure, which often leads us to entering toxic relationships, doing toxic things, chasing those highs, but the complication comes, as I said, with Mars conjunct Pluto, right, which lands on Monday night. So the soft, relational, value-driven energy of the Sun and Venus, which are both in Capricorn, right, followed by the ruthless, transformative, burn it down energy of Mars and Pluto. You're being asked, as I said this week, to be gentle and fierce, open and boundaried, tender, gentle and powerful. And if you try to choose one over the other this week, you'll miss the teaching of this week, right? The shadow of Sun Venus energy is performing value instead of living it, embodying it, right? It's saying you know your worth while still accepting treatment that proves you don't, people pleasing, allowing people to cross your boundaries. It's talking about self-love while staying in situations that require you to abandon yourself, reject yourself, hide yourself. It's the version of you that looks good on the surface, but underneath it's still negotiating, still compromising, still hoping that if you just show up perfectly enough, they'll finally see you. The gift is recognizing that you don't need to be seen to be valuable, you don't need to be chosen to be worthy. So ultimate this week is all about knowing that you don't need external validation to know what you know about yourself. Sun Venus energy this week is teaching you that your worth isn't up for debate. It's not something you prove, it's something you claim. Do you hear that? It's not something you prove, it's something you claim. And claiming it means walking away from anything that asks you to prove it this week, the 25th to the 31st of January 2026. So ultimately this week is asking, do you actually believe you're worthy of what you want? Not in theory, not as an affirmation, not as just something you say, but in practice, in your choices, in who you let stay in your life, in who you accept into your life, the thoughts you allow yourself to have. And it's not about getting rid of all your negative thoughts, It's just about bringing more loving, more self-accepting thoughts into your life and sort of like allowing yourself to be who you want to be, and knowing that if people around you don't accept you for who you are now, there are plenty of people out there that will, right? So, ultimately, as I said, this week is asking you, do you actually believe you're worthy of what you want? Not in theory, not as an affirmation, but in practice, in your choices, in who you let stay, in what you're willing to tolerate, and what you're finally ready to release, because belief without action is just a nice idea, right? And this week isn't about ideas, it's about truth. So, as I said, the second transit that's influencing us this week is Mercury's contra to Uranus, and Mercury is in Capricorn, Uranus is in Taurus, so both earth energy, right? Same intensity but opposite directions, contra-paralleling, right? So it's the same as an opposition. So ultimately, we've got Mercury in Capricorn bringing strategic thinking versus the sudden disruption that Uranus in Taurus can cause. Yes, it's grounded, it's in Taurus, but it's Uranus after all, right? So the mental restlessness, the sudden insights, the thoughts that you feel like they're coming from outside you rather than from inside you, which have been kind of bubbling for almost a week now, kind of reaches its climax, right? Bringing us the energy of the thoughts that we can't unthink, right? The insight that changes everything. So secrets can come out suddenly. People can just switch up suddenly, you know. Yes, I love you 1 minute, no I don't, you know. Also, you know, the moment that you can just see something so clearly that you can't go back to pretending you don't know it. Mercury in Capricorn wants to think it through, wants to be strategic, wants to have a plan before acting, but Uranus in Taurus says, but what if the plan is the problem? What if the strategy is what's keeping you stuck? What if the routine, the relationship, whatever it is? What if the breakthrough requires you to stop thinking and just move and letting go, right? This is the energy of sudden clarity, you know, just sudden awareness, suddenly knowing what to do. That can disrupt even the best laid plans, you know. It's the realization that arrives at 3 a.m. or the middle of the night and won't let you sleep. It's the conversation that goes sideways in the best way. It's the moment you say something you didn't know you were thinking until it was already out of your mouth. Mercury Uranus energy doesn't give you time to prepare, it just gives you truth, and truth doesn't wait for you to be ready, right? The shadow is using disruption as an excuse to not commit. It's the version of you that mistakes every sudden insight for divine guidance, that treats every impulse as innovation, that uses I just realized something as justification for blowing up what you've built, right? Not every sudden thought is wisdom. Sometimes it's just anxiety looking for an exit, right? So the gift is recognizing when the disruption, the chaos, you know, is a genuine breakthrough, and when it's just your nervous system trying to escape discomfort. The gift is learning to discern, you know, to have the difference between insight that serves your growth, your evolution, and insight that's just your fear dressed up as intuition. The gift is trusting that real wisdom doesn't need you to destroy everything. It just asks you to see clearly and choose differently, right? This week, Mercury's contrapower to Uranus is asking, what sudden knowing have you been ignoring because acting on it would be inconvenient? What truth have you been dismissing as just a random thought because accepting it would mean changing your life? What insight keeps returning because it's not random, it's real? The work isn't to act on every impulse though. As I said, you know, we have to tell the difference between insight that serves your growth and insight that's just fear dressed up as intuition. And it can be hard, you know, especially when we suffer from, you know, psychological and emotional imbalances, you know. I do, so I understand, you know, to get that stillness, to learn to trust yourself and stuff. But the work is to listen to, you know, the thoughts that keep returning, to pay attention to the thoughts that won't leave you alone. Again, I know that can be hard to tell when you know, suffer from severe mental illnesses as well. But, you know, try and stay grounded, seek advice if need be. We've got the Samaritans in the UK. And, you know, just try and do things in strategy to build your awareness, so you know when you're just flipping out, when it is anxiety or depression, and when it is your truth that's trying to show you the next step. Because a lot of the time, you know, it's not always, because we have chemical imbalances, right? But a lot of the time I found a lot of my anxiety and stuff is me holding in things that I know what I need to do. Not always, you know, but sometimes. So ultimately, you know, the work, the edge this week is to recognize that sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is trust the chaos and let it show you where the plan needs to change, and that's where your freedom lives, right? So the gift and the trap this week. So first let's deal with the trap, right? The trap is trying to be one thing when you're actually being asked to be two things at once. You're trying to be soft when Mars Pluto is demanding power this week. You're trying to be strategic when Mercury Uranus is bringing disruption. You're trying to hold it together when the whole week is asking you to let yourself be contradictory, change your mind, messy and human, you know. The trap is thinking you have to choose gentle or fierce, right? Open or boundaried, loving or powerful. But this week isn't about choosing, it's about integration, bringing it together, right? And integration isn't comfortable. Integration means you're tender and soft with the people you love whilst being ruthless with the patterns that hurt you. So this is a good energy to confront, the toxicity in your relationships, the truth in your relationships, the things that you're doing that you don't want to do. For some of you, it may be looking for a new job, or some of you may take even more drastic action. But remember, it's not just about just blowing your house down for the sake of it, So, think before you do things and make sure you're willing to live with the consequences. This week means that you're open to connection whilst being uncompromising about your worth. It means you're soft enough to feel everything whilst being strong enough to act on what you know is true. And this is not easy, this is not clean, that's not the version of you that fits into a neat box, but it's the version of you that's real. The gift this week is recognizing that you don't have to be one-dimensional to be powerful. That complexity is strength, not confusion. That holding contradiction is mastery, not weakness. Sun, Venus says know your worth. Mars, Pluto says act on it. Mercury, Uranus says trust the insight even when it disrupts your plan. And all three together say you can be all of it. Soft and strong, open and boundaried, loving and fierce. You don't have to choose. The choice point this week is integration, bringing it together, not choosing between light and shadow, but letting them inform each other, not splitting yourself into good parts and bad parts, but recognizing that your tenderness is powerful and your power can be tender, that your softness doesn't make you weak and your strength doesn't make you cold, that you can want connection and have boundaries, that you can be loving and say no, that you can be open and know your worth. So here's the question: what if the version of you that can hold both is the version you've been becoming all along? What if the contradiction isn't the problem? It's the integration you've been avoiding because one thing is easier than being whole. What if this week is actually asking you to finally stop choosing between parts of yourself and start showing up as all of you? That's the work, that's the gift, that's the whole teaching this week in terms of the gift and the trap, right? You don't have to be one thing, you just have to be true to yourself. And Shakespeare said, right, to thine self be true. So yeah, so now I'm going to talk about the shadow work, right? Starting with the psychological meaning, the mind trap. So the mind trap this week is the belief you have to be consistent to be trustworthy, that if you're soft one minute and fierce the next, people won't know who you are, that if you change your mind you're flaky, unreliable, that if you hold contradiction you're unstable. So you pick a version, usually the one that's most acceptable, most predictable, most likely to keep you safe, right? And you perform that version until you can't remember who you are, and what's the performance and what's real. You get lost. But ultimately, remember, this isn't a flaw, because life be lifing, and it can be hard when everybody's telling you who to be and what to look like, what to think on social media, in real life, and all of that. So we often do this, people pleaser and conforming, being what everyone else wants us to be to survive, right? Because somewhere in our past, maybe our childhoods, maybe our first relationships, maybe watching someone else getting punished for being inconsistent, you learn that people trust predictability and conforming and being like everybody else, and that love requires you to be the same person every day, that if you show too many sides of yourself, people will decide you're too complicated and leave. So your nervous system learns consistency equals safety, predictability equals love, and contradiction, that's chaos, that's dangerous, that's the thing you edit out to stay acceptable. But here's what that costs you: you become a caricature of yourself. You sort of like bend over and filter yourself, sanding down your edges to fit the box people expect. You suppress, bottle up, hide the parts of you that don't match the brand. You choose between being soft or strong, open or boundaried, loving or fierce or any other thing, right? When the truth is you're all of it, all the spectrum of human emotions, you know. Even if you're not full out psycho, you may have a lot of psycho in you. We all do, kind of, you know, even the nice ones. So yeah, depending on the moment, right, depending on our triggers, depending, for some of you it's when you drink alcohol, take drugs, that's when the bad side of you comes out, the more darker shadow. For others it's when people overstep your boundaries or hurt you, you know. So as I said, it depends on the moment, depends on what's needed, depending on who you actually are underneath all the performance, right? So, you know, it's all about being all, right? That's the truth. So this week astrology is activating the pattern of, you know, being all that you are, because it's time for you to see and recognize all the different sides of you rather than just trying to be on trend, on brand, right? And Sun, Venus and Mars, Pluto in the same week, you know, isn't a mistake. It's an invitation to stop choosing between parts of yourself and start integrating them, right? Bringing them together. The thought I have to be one way to be trusted is the trap. The truth is people who truly see you can handle your complexity, and the ones who can't, well, they're not your people anyway. So in terms of the, you know, the bloodline baggage this week, as I said, the ancestral pattern being activated this week is the belief that power and love are mutually exclusive, that if you're powerful you can't be soft, that if you're loving you can't have boundaries, that if you're fierce no one will want to be close to you. This isn't just your story, you know, it's humanity's story, right? Maybe somewhere back in your family lineage someone learned that showing power meant losing love. Maybe it was a grandmother who was punished for being too much, who learned to make herself small to be acceptable. Maybe it was a grandfather who equated strength with emotional unavailability, who taught through his silence that real men don't feel. Maybe it was a culture that told you powerful women are threatening and soft men are weak, that you had to pick a lane and stay in it. Whatever the origin, the message was clear. You can't be both, you can't be more than one thing. You have to choose, you know, for instance, power or love, strength or softness, boundaries or connection. And that false choice got passed down generation after generation until it landed in you, right? And now you're standing here trying to be one thing, wondering why it never feels like enough. This week is your chance to be the one who breaks the cycle, right? Not by rejecting power or love, but by proving that they can coexist, that they can live together, by showing that you can be fierce and tender, that you have boundaries and stay open, that your strength doesn't make you unlovable and your softness doesn't make you weak, by demonstrating that the most powerful thing you can be is whole. The work isn't just for you, it's for everyone who came before you, who were forced to choose, who split themselves in half to be acceptable, who never got to be all of who they were. And it's for everyone who comes after you, who deserves to inherit a world where complexity is celebrated, where contradiction is understood as integration, where being fully human is finally enough, right? So in terms of the spiritual meaning, the higher purpose this week, the spiritual lesson is about understanding that wholeness requires holding opposites, light and shadow, love and power, softness and strength. Your soul didn't come here to be half of what it is, it came here to be all of it, and all of it includes the parts that seem like they shouldn't be able to exist together but do. The sun's power out of Venus is teaching you that love is a form of power, that valuing yourself is an act of strength, that softness isn't weakness, it's courage. Mars conjunct Pluto is teaching you that power can be tender, that transformation, you know, change doesn't have to be violent, that strength includes the capacity to be vulnerable. And Mercury's contra power out to Uranus is teaching you that the breakthrough comes when you stop trying to be consistent and start being true. This isn't a test, this is a intuition. The discomfort you're feeling, the tension between wanting to be soft and needing to be strong, between wanting to connect and needing to protect yourself, isn't evidence that something's wrong. It's evidence that you're finally ready to become whole, to start splitting yourself into acceptable parts, to start performing a version that fits and start showing up as the full, complex, contradictory human you actually are. The higher purpose of this week is to teach you that integration is the path, not choosing between light and shadow, but letting them dance together, not, suppressing, bottling up one thing to increase the other, but recognizing that you need both, right? That your tenderness makes your power trustworthy, that your power protects your tenderness, that you're not too much or not enough, you're actually the right amount of everything that you are. This week is asking you to trust something, that the people who are meant for you can handle your wholeness, as I said, that the ones who need you to stay small weren't yours to begin with, that you don't have to choose between being loved and being powerful, you just have to stop believing their opposites as they never were, right? That was just a story someone told you, or what society tells us, right? And now, you have the right to write your own story, your own narrative, right? You're no longer controlled by other people's narrative. So yeah, now I'm just going to talk about the best days this week, the best days to do certain things to help you really utilize this week's energies and the day-to-day movements of the planets, right? So on Sunday the 25th of January, Venus makes a semi-sextile to the Moon's North Node. So it's adding to, the Venus energy of this week. It's a nice central day. Venus is all about making those subtle connections, so this is your preparation day to look after yourself before the intensity hits. So rest, gather your resources, don't push, right? On the 26th of January, Monday, right, the Sun's power to Venus is at its peaks, and Venus makes a quintile to Chiron, and there's the first quarter moon as well. So the Sun Venus, as I said, brings alignment between who you are and what you want. Venus Chiron energy brings healing to our old wounds around our sense of self and our self-worth, esteem and confidence. So this is a good day for self-care, for looking after relationships, for doing something that reminds you that you're valuable, but don't make big decisions yet, right? On the 27th of January, Mercury's contra to Uranus is at its peak, right? Mars' conjunction to Pluto is at its peak at 11:02. So this is the day of intensity, right? Because we've got Mercury and Uranus, we've got Mars, Uranus, Pluto being strong, right? So Uranus is bringing those sudden insights, the sudden awareness. Mars, Pluto brings, transformation, change through taking action, through using our power, by empowering ourselves through endings, letting things go. So if something needs to end, today's the day to do it, and if something needs to be said, today is the day to do it. But approach everything with consciousness. On the 27th of January, Tuesday, right, this energy can destroy if used recklessly, and if you're going to make a power move, today is it, but make sure it's a conscious power choice, not a reactive rage and aggression, right? On the 28th of January, Venus makes a semi-square to Saturn, Mercury makes a semi-square to Saturn as well. So this is the day of reality check, right? Saturn brings the boundaries, the limitations, the restrictions, the grounding, here's what's actually possible energy. So yeah, we may have been like, I can do this, I can do that, but Saturn's going to be like, no, this is in your capabilities, this is what you can actually do with your abilities, your time, your resources, whatever. So this is a good day for practical planning, for setting realistic expectations and goals, for understanding what's long-term and sustainable versus what's just a fantasy. It may not be the most fun day on the 28th of January, but it's a necessary day. So yeah, we're coming into the last 3 days of January, we're going into February, the spring's coming in the northern hemisphere. Yay, it's about to get warmer again. Yay, it's been too cold, and when I'm recording this, we're still just a few days into winter. But anyway, so on the 29th of January, Mercury makes a conjunction to Venus, a semi-square to Neptune. Venus makes a semi-square to Neptune too. So Mercury and Venus come together, mind meets heart, words meet values, which is the theme of this week. But Neptune brings confusion, fogginess, unsureness, us wanting to be deceived at the very worst end, us escaping into drugs, alcohol and toxic relationships, just wanting to escape into the fantasy, ignoring the red flags, right? So this is a day that we can use for creative work, poetry, art, but maybe not so good for contracts or commitments for you guys that have got really strong sort of like Neptune, Pisces energy in your chart, because the boundaries can become blurred, especially if you overindulge in intoxicating substances and people as well. So I recommend, you use this day for creativity and not decision making. But if you have to make decisions, then you have to, right? So on the 30th of January, the sun's parallel to Mercury peaks at, 6:34. The sun makes a quintile to Chiron and Mercury makes a quincunx to Jupiter. So the Sun Mercury energy aligns our identity with communication. The Sun's Chiron energy brings healing, and Mercury Jupiter brings changes, resets, recollaboration. So it's about, starting things, going back to the beginning, going back to maybe those New Year goals as we come to the end of the month tomorrow, right? So this is the day you can start to make sense of what happened earlier in the week, earlier this month. It's a good day for journaling, for therapy, for making meaning. On the 31st of January, Venus makes a quincunx to Jupiter, and the week closes down with this energy, asking us to, make changes between what we want and what's actually available. Don't just chase more just because it's there. Check whether it actually serves you, whatever you're putting your time and energy to. End the week with discernment, using your awareness and judgment. So ultimately, it's about conscious choice and awareness, right? So now I'm going to talk more about the actual work of this week. I've given you the theory. How do we practice it, right? So as I said, this week's practice is learning to hold both versions of yourself instead of either or. The goal isn't to choose between soft and strong or anything else. It's to find a version of you that can be both and all spectrum of humor and expression, right? Depending on what's needed. So step one, notice when you're splitting, right? When you catch yourself thinking, I have to be tough right now, or I need to be soft here, pause and ask, or can I be both? Step two, name what's actually needed, not what you think you're supposed to be, what's actually needed in this moment. Sometimes it's boundaries, sometimes it's openness, sometimes it's both at once. Trust your actual knowing, not your conditioning. Step three, practice micro-integration. Start small. Be tender with someone whilst holding a clear boundary. Be powerful in a conversation whilst staying open to feedback. Be fierce about your worth whilst being soft with yourself when you slip. Integration happens in small movements, right? Notice the discomfort. Integration can feel awkward at first because you're used to being one thing at a time. Let it be awkward. Let yourself be learning. You're building new pathways, that takes time. Step 5, celebrate the moments you can hold both. When you're loving and boundaried, when you're powerful and tender and soft, when you're open and protected. Those moments are the proof that you're integrating all sides of you, So notice these small wins and celebrate them. Step 6, be patient with the moments you can't. You will split, you will default to old patterns, you will choose one over the other because it's familiar. That's not failure, that's learning. The work is noticing, not perfecting. This practice isn't about getting it right, it's about expanding your ability, your capacity to hold contradictions without needing to resolve them. That's integration, that's mastery, that's the work, right? So as I said, integration is the work that works, right? And what makes all of these weekly guidance I give real, and also you integrating all the different aspects of yourself in whatever it is you're trying to bring into your life, right? Ultimately, integration is where insight becomes lived reality, where our knowledge becomes our lifestyle because we practice what we know, right? So to make this week work more touchable, tangible. We can do the both and mirror. So every time you catch yourself in at either or, such as I have to be strong or soft, I have to protect myself or stay open, reframe it as both and. I can be strong and soft, I can protect myself and stay open. Say it aloud. Your nervous system needs to hear it's possible. So, you know, have one conversation this week where you practice both being tender and boundaried. Say something vulnerable and hold your ground. Express care and maintain your limits. This is the practice, not choosing between connection and self-protection, but bringing both into the same space. You can also do some shadow light inventory, so make 2 columns. So in column 1, the parts of you that feel good, acceptable and light. In column 2, put the parts of you that feel bad, unacceptable, you know, your shadow. Now ask, what if both columns are you? What if none of it needs to be eliminated, just integrated? What if the work is accepting all of it? You can also do a performance audit. So notice when you're performing a version of yourself versus being yourself, when you're being the strong one, when you actually feel fragile, when you're being a soft one, when you actually feel strong and fierce. The performance is the trap. The integration is letting yourself be whoever you actually are in each moment. So in terms of, you know, the Mars Pluto release, when Mars Pluto energy peaks, do something physical that lets you, you know, embody, you know, live both power and release. Punch a pillow whilst crying, run while screaming, move intensity through your body instead of letting it live in your head. Power doesn't have to be cold, let it be hot, let it be messy, let it be real. Pick one, do it fully. Integration isn't about doing everything, it's about doing one thing with your whole self instead of half-assing 5 things with the fragments, you know, the different personas, mass, conformity, expectational things that you do, right? Be your whole self, you know, instead of half-assing 5 things with fragments of who you are, right? So in terms of the vibe check this week, aka the proof in the pudding, you'll know when the work is working when you notice these things changing this week. You catch yourself starting to split into good me versus bad me and pause, what if both are just me? You're able to be tender with someone whilst holding the boundary, and it doesn't feel like betrayal, it feels like integration. You notice you can be powerful without being cold, soft without being weak. The two aren't mutually exclusive anymore. Someone asks you to choose between being nice or being honest, and you find a way to be both. You feel contradictory emotions at the same time, love and anger, grief and relief, fear and excitement, and you don't panic, you just hold them. You stop apologizing for being too much or not enough. You are just who you are, and that's complete, right? You can show up powerfully in your life without abandoning your softness, and show up tenderly without abandoning your strength, right? And the integration, the bringing it all together, doesn't feel like work anymore. It just feels like being yourself, finally, fully, without editing. So remember this week, as always, progress isn't a straight line. Some days you will integrate beautifully. Some days you'll split right back into old patterns. What matters is that you're noticing, you're practicing, you're expanding your capacity to be whole, you know? And, you know, that's the work, and the rest will unfold from there. The small changes will go into big ones, and then, you know, you'll become fully into yourself. So of course by the end of the week, you know, the week begins on Sunday, ends on Saturday, when my astrological week does, and you're not going to be totally yourself. You are going to split, you are going to fall and fail, but it's about getting back up. It's about continuously, day after day, month after month, week after week, year after year, trying to become the best you know? And that's to your standards, not to anyone else, and loving yourself while you're, I wouldn't say making mistakes, but loving yourself in your messiness, your humanness, your flaws, you know, and your strengths and weakness, your all entire being, you know, the good, the bad and the destructive, you know. So yeah, Okay, so now I'm going to give zodiac guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising signs this week, right? So read your rising sign first. That's where the energy lands in your actual chart. But if you know your sun sign and not your rising, read that instead. And if you're extra curious, read both your sun and rising. And also if you know your moon sign, read what it says about that as well, because sometimes the overlapping the guidance is where the real work lives, right? So yeah. So for Aries, sun, moon and rising, the sun parallel to Venus is in your 10th house. Asks you, are you building something that actually reflects your values or just something that looks good? Mars conjunct Pluto in the same space says, if it is, you trying to just look good, it's time to tear it down. The work this week is recognizing that your worth isn't in your achievements, it's in whether those achievements are actually yours and what you actually want to achieve, because a lot of the time we just achieve what society, our parents and other people expect of us, right? And to remember this week, you can be successful and authentic, you can be powerful and true, you don't have to choose, but you do have to build something that reflects who you actually are, not who you think you need to be acceptable, right? Taurus, the sun parallel Venus in your 9th house says what you believe about yourself is changing. Mars conjunction to Pluto says let the old beliefs die. Mercury's contra-parallel to Uranus in your 1st house disrupts your identity. The work this week is recognizing that you're not who you were, and that's not loss, that's growth, that's evolution. You can be stable and changing. You can be grounded and growing. The contradiction is the integration, Taurus. Let yourself become someone new whilst honouring what's always been true about you. That's the mastery this week. Gemini, this week your 8th and 12th house are activated. So sun parallel Venus in your 8th house asks, what do you actually value in intimacy? Mars conjunct Pluto says, if you're not getting it, end it. Mercury contra-parallel Uranus in your 12th house operates between awareness. The work this week is bringing what's unconscious into consciousness, the patterns, the fears, the ways you've been abandoning yourself in relationship because you think that's what connection requires. You can be intimate and boundaried. You can be vulnerable and protected. That's not contradiction, that's integration. Practice it. Cancer, this week lands in your 7th and 11th house. So sun parallel Venus in your 7th house says you're worthy of partnership that honours you. Mars conjunction to Pluto says if your current partnership doesn't transform, leave it. Mercury's contra-parallel to Uranus in the 11th house disrupts your sense of belonging. The work this week is recognising that you can be in relationship and yourself, and you can be in a relationship with yourself even if you're in relationship with others, right? You can belong and be authentic. You don't have to abandon who you are to be chosen. And if someone's asking you to abandon yourself, they're not your person. Let yourself be whole. The right people will stay. Leo, your 6th and 10th house are activated this week. So sun parallel Venus in your 6th house asks, does your daily life reflect your values? Mars conjunct Pluto says, if it doesn't, burn it down and rebuild. Mercury's contra-parallel to Uranus in the 10th house disrupts your professional identity. The work this week is recognizing that you can be disciplined and joyful. You can work hard and have boundaries. You can be committed to your path and let yourself rest. The integration is the work. You don't have to burn yourself out to be successful. Let yourself be sustainable, right? Virgo, your 5th and 9th house are activated, right? So sun parallel Venus in the 5th house says what you create matters. Mars conjunct Pluto says create from truth, not from what you think will be accepted. Mercury contra-parallel Uranus in your 9th house disrupts your beliefs. The work this week is letting yourself create something real, something raw, something that's actually yours, not something designed to impress. You can be excellent and authentic. You can be skilled and honest. The art that comes from that integration is the art that matters. Make it. Libra, this week lands in your 4th and 8th house, right? So sun parallel Venus in the 4th house asks, does your foundation support who you're becoming? Mars conjunct Pluto says, if you know your foundation, your daily routine, don't support who you're becoming, transform them. Mercury's contra-parallel to Uranus in your 8th house disrupts disrupts how you handle intimacy and shared resources. The work this week is recognizing that you can have a stable foundation and allow it to evolve, you right, and grow. You can honor where you came from and become someone new. You can be rooted and growing. That's not betrayal, that's integration. Let yourself change without destroying what's solid, right? Scorpio, this week activates your 3rd and 7th houses, right? So the Sun, parallel Venus in your 3rd house says speak your truth with love. Mars conjunct Pluto says speak your truth with power. Mercury's contra parallel to Uranus in your 7th house disrupts your relationships. The work this week is learning to be honest and kind, direct and caring, clear and compassionate. You don't have to choose between truth and tenderness. The integration is speaking what's real in a way that creates connection instead of destruction. That's your work this week. Practice it. Sagittarius, the Sun, parallel Venus in your 2nd house says you're worthy of abundance. Mars conjunct Pluto says if your work doesn't reflect that, change it. Mercury contra parallel to Uranus in the 6th house disrupts your routines. The work this week is recognizing that you can value yourself and work hard. You can know your worth and be disciplined. You can be abundant and sustainable. The integration is building a life that honors both your value and your capacity. You don't have to prove your worth through exhaustion. Let yourself be supported. Capricorn, this week lands directly in your 1st and 5th houses, right? So the Sun parallel to Venus in the 1st house says you are the work. Mars conjunct Pluto says transform into who you're actually becoming, not who you think you should be. Mercury's contra parallel to Uranus in your 5th house disrupts how you express yourself. The work this week is letting yourself be seen, all of you, not just the competent version that knows what to do, right? Not just the strong version, right, but the tender, the gentle, the one who's flawed, right, the creative version as well, the version that plays. You can be disciplined and joyful, you can be serious and light. The integration is your power, claim it. Aquarius, your 4th and 12th houses are under the spotlight and activated this week. So Sun parallel Venus in your 12th house operates beneath awareness, illuminating what you've been hiding from yourself. Mars conjunct Pluto says bring it into light. Mercury's contra parallel Uranus in your 4th house gets in the way of your foundation, your routine. The work this week is recognizing that you can be spiritual and grounded. You can do deep inner work and maintain your freedom. You can explore the unconscious and stay rooted. The integration is the work. You don't have to choose between depth and stability. Let yourself be both, right? Pisces, your 11th and 3rd houses are activated this week, right? So Sun parallel Venus in your 11th house says you're worthy of community and people that value you for who you are. And Mars conjunct Pluto says if your current community doesn't value you, find a new one. Mercury's contra parallel to Uranus in your 3rd house disrupts how you communicate. The work this week is recognizing that you can belong and be yourself. You can be part of the collective and maintain your individuality. You can contribute and have boundaries. The integration is showing up fully without abandoning yourself. That's not selfish, that's sustainable. Practice it. So yeah, that's the end of the guidance for all Sun, Moon and Rising signs this week. So now I'm going to give you some grounding practices for this week when things get heavy, right? So you can try the integration breath. So breathe in softness, inhale slowly, gently, breathe out power, exhale with force, with sound, repeat. Let your breath teach your body that both can exist in the same system. You don't have to choose. The both and body scan. Sit quietly, notice where you feel soft in your body, maybe your heart, your belly. Notice where you feel strong, maybe your legs, your core. Both are you, both are real. Both can be present at once. Just notice, that's enough. Your feet and heart. You can stand with your feet firmly on the ground. Feel the strength in your legs, your core, your foundation. Now put your hand on your heart. Feel the softness, the tenderness, the vulnerability. You are both grounded and open, protected and accessible. Let yourself feel it, and then you can become it, right? The pause button. When the contradictions feel overwhelming, when you don't know whether to be soft or strong, open or protected, pause. Don't choose yet, just sit with the question, what if I don't have to choose? What if both are true? Sometimes the most grounding thing to do is not to force a decision. You can also call your integration witness if you have one, if you decide to have one. Talk to someone who's seen you be both, who has seen all of your human expressions, who's witnessed your softness and your strength, who knows you're not one-dimensional. Sometimes grounding is just remembering that someone else sees you as whole, you know? Ground as many times you need to. Integration is the hard work this week. Your nervous system is learning a new way of being, so support it. And remember, you're not failing when you need to ground, you're being wise, right? So now I'm just going to talk about the uncomfortable question to ask yourself this week. As I said, this week isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. Don't rush to answer this question. Let it work on you. So you can ask, which part of myself have I been suppressing, bottling up, because I think it makes the other parts more acceptable? And what would happen if I let all of me show up at once? Let that sit. Don't perform wholeness. Don't write what sounds integrated. Let the question land in your body and see what comes up. The resistance you feel, if any, the fear of being too much or whatever, that's the edge. That's where the freedom lives, right? So in terms of journaling prompts this week, you can ask yourself these questions, right? So the part of me I have decided is acceptable is, so right, finish that sentence. And the part I've decided is too much is, finish that sentence. You can also ask yourself, if I let myself be both soft and strong in the same moment, I'm afraid that, and the version of me that's trying to, emerge, come to light, doesn't fit the box I've been living in because, and maybe people wouldn't accept me, I'll lose my friends, my family, whatever it is. You can also ask, when I choose between parts of myself instead of integrating them, what I'm actually protecting myself is from, and typically it's abandonment or rejection, right? And finally, you can ask, if I showed up as all of me, contradictions, warts and all, the first thing that would change is, so remember to write down, finish these journaling prompts, or if you just choose to do one, or if you do them all, it's up to you with all these suggestions. Choose what sticks and let go of what doesn't stick, right? So write without editing, let it be contradictory, let it not make sense, let yourself be messy on the page. That's where the integration begins, in the mess, not in the clean up version, right? So in terms of the final T this week, as I said, we're being asked to hold contradictions that feel like they shouldn't fit in the same body, soft and strong, open and protected, loving and fierce, and your conditioning is screaming that you have to choose, that being one makes you understandable, that complexity is chaos. But here's what's actually true. The version of you that can hold both is the version you've been becoming all along, or at least it's who you need to become, right? The sun's parallel to Venus says you're worthy. Mars conjunction to Pluto says prove it through your choices. Mercury's conjunct parallel to Uranus says the breakthrough comes when you stop trying to be consistent and start being true. And all three together say you're not too much, right? Are you? And we all deserve to be accepted for us, right? As long as we're not doing no harm to others, right? So yeah, the sun's parallel to Venus says you're worthy. Mars conjunction to Pluto says prove it through your choices. Mercury's conjunct parallel to Uranus says the breakthrough comes when you start trying to be consistent and start being true. So I repeated that again because this is important. And all three together say you're not too much, you are not enough, you are enough, right? You're exactly the right amount of everything you are, and the work is letting all of that show up. And the other T this week is integration isn't comfortable, change isn't easy. That's why it's so easy for us to stay in our comfort zone, but that's what causes the pain, right? Integration means being tender with people, and I know there's a lot of a-holes out there, and we can't just be tender with everybody we can from a distance, the ones we choose to be close to us. And yeah, we've got family who we have to engage with, who can be unboundaried and stuff, but we may just have to distance ourselves, building our resilience. And you may say, why do I need to build my resilience and ignore what they say? Because they won't change. So we have to be the one that change if you want to be happy. I've had to learn this in my life. I had to learn not to take things personally and to heart. I used to think that if people would be in the a-hole, it's always my fault. Sometimes it was because maybe it's my manner, but I always used to think whatever it was always something I had the power to change. But ultimately, we only have the power to change our own behavior, right? So integration means, that we're tender with people who we love whilst being ruthless with the patterns that hurt you by not accepting toxic behavior or distancing ourselves, because sometimes that's the only thing we can do. It means you're powerful in your life whilst being soft with yourself when you slip and make mistakes. I mean, if I had £1 for every time I fall backwards, then I'd be rich by now. But yeah, so it means that you hold your worth whilst being open to connection, and that's not easy, that's not clean, but that's real. And the real is what you've been searching for underneath all that performance. This week is asking you to trust something, that you don't have to be one thing to be loved, that you don't have to choose between parts of yourself to be acceptable, that the people who are meant for you can handle your wholeness, right? And the ones who can't weren't yours to begin with. And you've been editing yourself for so long, you forgot what you actually look like without the filter. And look, 2020 seems so distant, but it was 6 years since COVID, and now we've got 4 years left of the 2020s going into the 2030s. Come on, make these last 4 years count, right? This week, let the filter drop, let yourself be contradictory, let yourself be complex, let yourself be human. That's not weakness, that's where the power lives, right? Take care of yourself this week, ground when you need to, let Mars, Pluto do what it needs to, hold both soft and strong even when it feels impossible, and trust, really trust that the version of you that's emerging, that wants to come out, that authentic you is the version that you have been becoming all along, and that's what you need to be. You're not falling apart, you're finally coming together, and that's the difference. You're not falling apart, you're finally coming together, even if there's lots of chaos this week and things, end. So now I'm just going to wrap up with my astrological flow, but before that I'm going to give mantras for all you guys. So Aries, your mantra this week is, I build from my truth, not from what looks good. Authenticity is my foundation. Taurus, I evolve without losing my roots. Stability and growth are not opposites. Gemini, I am intimate without abandoning myself. Vulnerability includes boundaries. Cancer, I belong without performing. The right people can hold my truth and handle it. Leo, I succeed without burning out. Discipline includes joy and happiness. Virgo, I create from truth, not from perfection. My authentic heart matters most. Libra, I evolve without betraying my foundation. Growth honors what's solid. Scorpio, I speak truth with care. Honesty and kindness are not opposites. Sagittarius, I am worthy beyond my productivity. Value is in heaven. Capricorn, I am disciplined and joyful. Seriousness includes play. Aquarius, I am deep and grounded. Inner work includes, the right sort of like foundations, right? Routine. Pisces, I belong and stay myself. Contribution includes boundaries, right? So the astrological flow this week is, you thought you had to choose soft or strong, open or protected, light or shadow, love or power, but here's what you're learning. You have always been both. The work was never about choosing, it was always about integration, right? So yeah, I'm Amani, your astrological life coach, and this has been the weekly scopes from the 25th to the 31st of January. Yes, January's over, right? February next week. So yeah, take care. And I do believe it's a leap year. Maybe I do something special for the leap year week. But anyway, take care and see you next time.